Every day on our channel, Speak English Easily 24/7, we share helpful tips to make learning English simple and enjoyable. If you are new here, remember to subscribe so you never miss a lesson. We upload daily videos that teach English using real stories, everyday situations, and natural expressions you can use in daily conversation. Today, I want to share a few personal stories from my own life. Listening to these stories carefully will help you understand how English sounds in real conversations and how people express their thoughts in natural, everyday ways. A few weeks ago, something a little different happened to me. I had planned to visit my parents, so I woke up earlier than usual. Normally, I get up around 7 in the morning, but on that particular day, I opened my eyes at 6. It felt a little strange to be awake so early, but I was excited about seeing my parents. While getting ready, I suddenly remembered that the bus schedule had changed recently. This meant I had to leave home even earlier than I expected. I quickly made myself a warm cup of coffee, grabbed my bag, and rushed out of the house. As I walked toward the bus stop, I noticed how quiet the streets were. It was much calmer than usual. Only a few cars passed by, and I saw very few people heading to work or school. The quiet atmosphere made me feel peaceful, yet at the same time I felt a bit nervous because I didn't want to miss my bus. When I finally reached the stop and got on the bus, I found a seat near the window. I always choose the window seat if I can. Looking outside during a bus ride gives me time to relax and think about different things. While the bus moved forward, I looked around and observed the people sitting nearby. One man was reading a newspaper with full concentration. A woman on the other side was scrolling through her phone. Watching people during their morning commute is always interesting to me. Everyone has their own little routine. Some people like to read, others listen to music, and some simply look outside the window and enjoy the view. Seeing everyone focused on their own activities made me think about how I could use my travel time better. Maybe I could practice English listening, or perhaps read a short story on my phone during the ride. After about 40 minutes, the bus reached the town where my parents live. When I got off, I saw them standing outside, smiling warmly like they always do. I felt happy and comforted as I walked toward them. We decided to go to the local park, a place we all enjoy visiting. The park is peaceful and full of tall trees that provide cool shade. It's the perfect spot to relax and talk. While we walked along the park's path, my father began telling me about the small garden he had recently started growing. He was excited to share the details. He told me he had planted vegetables and herbs, and that it took a lot of effort to take care of them. I listened carefully as he explained how important it was to water the plants every morning. He spends almost an hour each day making sure everything is healthy and growing well. I admired his dedication and enjoyed hearing about something he cared so much about. As my father continued talking about his garden, he explained how every day he checks the plants carefully. He looks for pests, trims the leaves, and makes sure each plant gets the right amount of sunlight and water. Listening to him made me realize something important. Patience and consistency are not only useful for gardening, but for life in general. Whether we are growing plants, learning a new skill, or improving ourselves, steady effort always brings results over time. After our peaceful walk in the park, my mother invited me inside for breakfast. She had prepared my favorite meal, scrambled eggs with fresh vegetables, along with a warm cup of herbal tea. The familiar taste made me feel comforted and happy. While eating, I shared with my parents how my week had been. I told them about a challenging project at work that required careful planning and close teamwork with colleagues from another city. It had been stressful at times because we needed to coordinate schedules, discuss ideas, and solve problems together. My mother listened quietly and then gently reminded me to take breaks and not let work overwhelm me. She always gives advice in a calm and caring way, and it reminded me how easy it is to forget to rest when life becomes busy. Her words helped me realize that taking care of myself is just as important as completing any project. Later in the afternoon, I went to a small local bookstore, one of my favorite places. Bookstores have a special charm. They smell of paper, ink, and endless possibilities. As I walked through the shelves, I found a book on personal development that I had been wanting to read for months. I sat in a quiet corner and read a few chapters. The peaceful atmosphere made it easy to focus and enjoy the moment. While I was reading, I noticed a young woman standing near the same shelf. Her name was Sarah, and we started a short conversation about books. She told me about one of her favorite authors and recommended a book that had changed her perspective on life. I enjoyed our brief exchange because it reminded me how small, unexpected conversations with strangers can brighten an ordinary day. Meeting someone new often brings fresh ideas and inspires new thoughts. As I left the bookstore, I realized how meaningful small moments can be. Finding a book I had been wanting to read, talking to someone with similar interests, or simply enjoying a peaceful corner. All these little things can make a day memorable. On my way home, I thought about how many small choices we make daily. These choices might seem simple, like deciding which road to take, whom to talk to, or what book to pick up, but they influence our mood, our growth, and sometimes even how we see life. Later that evening, after returning home, my husband and I decided to cook dinner together. We chose to make a simple pasta dish using fresh ingredients we had bought from the market earlier in the week. Cooking with him always feels enjoyable because it allows us to spend quality time together. While chopping vegetables and stirring the sauce, we talked about our plans for the upcoming week. We discussed places we wanted to visit, new recipes we wanted to try, and even small habits we hoped to improve in our daily routines. Sharing these moments made me appreciate how cooking together helps us stay connected, communicate better, and share responsibilities in a relaxed and meaningful way. Cooking together with my husband did more than just help us share responsibilities in the kitchen. It also gave us a chance to connect, talk, and relax after a long day. I have always believed that everyday routines become more enjoyable when they are shared with someone who cares about you. After finishing our meal, we decided to take a short walk around our neighborhood. The evening was calm, and a gentle, cool breeze made the walk even more pleasant. As we walked, we saw children playing happily in the park, neighbors greeting each other with warm smiles, and a few people jogging to stay healthy. Watching these simple scenes reminded me how quietly life moves forward. Nothing dramatic happens most of the time, yet every moment is filled with small opportunities and quiet beauty. Before going to bed, I spent a few minutes reviewing the English phrases and expressions I had learned earlier in the day. I like to write new words in a notebook and then make simple sentences with them. This habit has helped me improve my English naturally over the years. It made me think again about something my father had shown me through his gardening routine. Consistency matters. Just like he takes care of his plants every morning, practicing English a little bit every day leads to slow but steady progress. Listening to everyday stories, like the one I am sharing with you now, helps you learn more than vocabulary. It teaches you how real conversations sound, how people describe their day, and how thoughts flow naturally in English. When you pay attention to small details, practice useful expressions, and imagine yourself in similar situations, your listening and speaking skills improve much faster than you might expect. The next morning, I wanted to start my day with something healthy and refreshing, so I went for a short jog in the nearby park. The air was cool and fresh, and I could hear birds singing gently in the trees as I ran. These little sounds made the morning feel calm and peaceful. While jogging, I noticed an older man sitting on a bench reading a book. When I waved at him, he smiled kindly. Even a simple gesture like this can make you feel connected to your community. It reminds you that you are part of a bigger world filled with people living their own stories. After finishing my run, I spent a few minutes stretching to relax my muscles. Then I walked back home feeling refreshed, energetic, and ready to start the day with a positive mindset. Once I reached home, I prepared breakfast while listening to an English podcast. I enjoy combining everyday routines with language practice because it helps me learn new words without feeling pressured. When learning becomes a natural part of your day, it becomes easier to remember and use new expressions. That morning, I made a simple breakfast, oatmeal with fresh fruit. I added slices of banana and a handful of berries, which made the meal colorful and delicious. As I ate, I reflected on how even ordinary mornings can become meaningful when we take small steps toward self-improvement. Whether it is practicing English, going for a jog, or cooking a healthy meal, every small habit adds to a better life over time. As I enjoyed my oatmeal, fresh fruits, and a glass of juice, I found myself thinking about everything that had happened the previous day. I realized that simple, everyday routines, like preparing breakfast, taking a walk, or even cleaning, are perfect chances to practice English naturally. You can describe your actions in English, speak to someone nearby, or simply think in English while doing these small tasks. These little habits slowly build confidence without feeling like formal study. Later that morning, I had an important meeting at work. I needed to present a report to colleagues from different departments. At first, I felt a little nervous, mainly because I wanted to explain everything clearly and professionally. Before the meeting started, I took a deep breath and reminded myself to stay calm, speak slowly, and focus on the main points. Once I began presenting, I noticed that using simple and clear English helped everyone follow the details easily. No one looked confused, and the flow of the discussion was smooth. One of my colleagues, David, asked a few follow-up questions about the project. I answered him with confidence, using examples from our recent work to make my explanation stronger. After the meeting, I felt proud of how well I had communicated. It reminded me once again that preparation, practice, and clarity are extremely important in the workplace, especially when presenting information to a group. When work ended, I decided to stop by a small cafe that I often visit because of its peaceful atmosphere and delicious coffee. I chose a seat next to the window and ordered a cappuccino. While I waited for my drink, I noticed a group of students sitting together with notebooks and textbooks. They were practicing English by discussing a story they had recently read. They tried using new vocabulary words and sentences and helped each other understand difficult expressions. Watching them learn in such an active and supportive way inspired me. It made me think about how I, too, could create more opportunities to practice English in real-life settings outside of books, apps, and formal lessons. On my way home, I walked past a small flower shop and decided to go inside. The owner, Mr. Thompson, is an older man with a friendly face and a kind smile. His shop is always filled with colorful, fresh flowers, and the smell is wonderful. I chose a bright bouquet of tulips for my husband because I knew it would bring extra warmth to our evening. While selecting the flowers, Mr. Thompson and I began chatting. We talked about gardening, seasonal weather changes, and even a few stories from his past travels. These simple conversations always make me happy because they feel natural and sincere. At the same time, they help me improve my English without pressure. Interactions like these remind me that learning a language happens everywhere, in shops, cafes, parks, and even during quick conversations with people we meet by chance. The more we use English in real situations, the more confident and fluent we become. That evening, when I returned home with the flowers, my husband and I decided yet again to spend some quiet time together. We talked about our day, shared small experiences, and appreciated the beauty in simple moments. Every day may seem ordinary, but when you notice the details and stay open to learning, each day becomes meaningful. When I reached home that evening, my husband and I decided to rearrange a few things in our living room. We moved the sofa closer to the window so we could enjoy more natural light during the day. We also placed a small table near the corner to hold our plants. As we organized the room together, we started talking about the memories we had created there. We remembered the first dinner we cooked together in that space and the quiet evenings we spent reading side by side on the sofa. Sharing these stories in English made the conversation feel more meaningful, and at the same time, it helped me practice natural expressions without even thinking about it. Later that night, I spent some quiet time reading a novel I had recently started. The story followed a woman who traveled alone to a peaceful small town, where she slowly discovered a new way of looking at life. As I read, I found myself reflecting on how small decisions, like choosing a different path for a walk or stopping to talk to a neighbor, can influence our attitude, our thoughts, and even how we understand ourselves. Reading in English does more than teach vocabulary. It gives you ideas about how to describe emotions, places, and experiences in your own words. It opens your mind to new ways of thinking and helps you express details more naturally. Before going to bed, I took out my notebook and wrote a short diary entry in English. I described everything that had happened that day, the people I met, the interesting conversations I had, and the small moments that made me smile. Writing regularly helps me organize my thoughts clearly. It also allows me to practice forming sentences that I can later use confidently while speaking. I realized once again that combining listening, speaking, and writing in daily life makes learning English much more effective than focusing on only one skill. Using English in different ways helps the language become a natural part of everyday life. The next morning, I felt curious and decided to try something new. There was a small neighborhood market I had passed many times before, but had never taken the time to explore. I finally chose to visit it. As I walked toward the market, I noticed how different the streets felt compared to my usual route. The houses looked older, with charming balconies and colorful walls. Small shops lined the road, selling fresh fruits, vegetables, handmade baskets, and beautiful local crafts. I stopped at a fruit stand where the vendor, Mr. Karim, greeted me with a friendly smile. He seemed warm and welcoming. He offered me a piece of a local fruit I had never tasted before. It was sweet, slightly tangy, and very refreshing. I enjoyed it so much that I bought a few pieces to take home. I thanked him for the recommendation and for his kindness. That small interaction reminded me how simple gestures, like tasting a new fruit, greeting a stranger, or sharing a smile, can brighten an ordinary day. Moments like these show how many opportunities we have to learn, connect, and grow, even in the most unexpected places. When we stay open to new experiences and pay attention to the little details around us, life becomes richer and more enjoyable. As I continued walking through the lively neighborhood market, I noticed a man repairing bicycles outside a tiny workshop. He was deeply focused on his work, using tools and equipment I didn't recognize. Curious, I approached him and asked how long he had been repairing bicycles. He smiled and told me he had been doing it for more than 20 years. He learned everything from his father, he said, and he truly enjoyed helping people fix their bikes so they could continue their journeys safely. I listened with interest, paying attention not only to his story, but also to his clear and calm way of speaking. Conversations like this are perfect for practicing English because they feel natural and happen in real life. After exploring the market, I felt a bit hungry, so I walked to a nearby cafe for quick lunch. I ordered a vegetable sandwich and a warm cup of green tea. The cafe had a peaceful atmosphere, and I found a cozy seat near the window. While eating, I noticed an elderly woman sitting alone at another table. She was reading a newspaper and taking notes in a small notebook. I found it interesting how different people choose to spend their lunch breaks. Some people relax and enjoy their meals quietly, some catch up on work or messages, and others, like this woman, dedicate their time to learning something new or staying informed. As I watched her, I imagined what her day might be like, and I silently described her actions in my mind in English. Doing this kind of mental exercise helps me think in English more naturally, without feeling pressured. When I returned home later that day, I found a package waiting for me at the door. It was a book I had ordered about time management and productivity. I opened it carefully, excited to start reading. The introduction explained how small daily habits can shape long-term success. The author emphasized that meaningful change doesn't come from big moments, but from consistent actions repeated over time. As I read, I realized that some of the routines I already practice, jogging in the morning, visiting new places, reading every evening, are positive habits that help me stay organized, calm, and focused. I made a note in my journal to apply some of the techniques from the book and see if they would improve my day even more. In the afternoon, my husband suggested doing something creative together, which sounded like a wonderful idea. We decided to paint one of the walls in our living room a new color. We spread old newspapers on the floor, prepared the paint, and began brushing the walls slowly. While painting, we talked about how different colors can affect our mood, energy, and even our motivation. Bright colors can make a room feel lively, while softer shades create a calm and peaceful atmosphere. As we worked, I practiced describing the shades, tones, and textures in English. I enjoyed finding simple words that matched the colors we were using, which helped me strengthen my vocabulary in a practical way. Painting together gave us time to talk, laugh, and enjoy the creative process. It reminded me that learning English doesn't always have to be done with books or lessons. It can happen naturally during daily tasks, when we describe colors, explain ideas, or share memories. Moments like these make learning enjoyable and meaningful. As we continued painting the wall together, I practiced describing the colors we were using. I said words like light blue, soft green, and warm beige. These simple color descriptions helped me improve my vocabulary while staying relaxed. We laughed when I accidentally spilled a little paint on the floor. It wasn't a big mistake, but it reminded me that errors, whether in learning a language or doing anything new, are completely normal. Small mistakes are part of the learning process, and they often teach us more than perfect results do. Once we finished painting, we stepped outside for a short walk to enjoy some fresh air. The neighborhood children were playing soccer in a small field nearby. I watched them carefully, noticing how focused they were and how much joy they found in chasing the ball. Their fast footwork, excited shouts, and continuous energy made the game lively and fun to watch. I thought about how simple activities like playing sports or observing others can teach patience, teamwork, quick thinking, and how to manage energy. As we walked, I described everything I saw to my husband using full English sentences, adding as many details as possible. This exercise helped me realize that daily observations can be wonderful opportunities to practice speaking naturally, without stress. Later that evening, I prepared a simple dinner of grilled vegetables and rice. While chopping the vegetables and stirring the pot, I listened to an English podcast about interesting cultural traditions from different parts of the world. The host talked about festivals, ceremonies, and local customs from countries I had never visited. Some traditions were surprising, while others felt familiar. I repeated a few phrases aloud to practice pronunciation and fluency. Cooking while listening to English might seem like a small activity, but it is actually a very effective way to combine learning with everyday routines. After dinner, I sat down at my desk to review the emails and messages I had received during the day. Some were related to work, and others were personal notes from friends and family. I replied to all of them in English, trying to write clear, polite, and natural sentences. I noticed that communicating in English with real people, rather than practicing only with books, lessons, or apps, helps me remember expressions more easily. Every message, even a short one, becomes a small practice session that builds confidence and strengthens my writing skills. Before going to bed, I took a few minutes to plan the next day. I wrote down my tasks, errands, and a few ideas for practicing English. I included activities like visiting a local park, reading a few chapters of a book, and speaking English during simple daily routines. I also planned to describe the things I would see during the day, just like I had been doing recently. Making a plan helped me feel organized and motivated. As I finished writing, I thought about how learning English has become a natural part of my daily life. It doesn't feel like homework anymore. Instead, it blends smoothly with simple activities: cooking, walking, observing, reading, or even painting a wall. These small habits, repeated day after day, help me improve without pressure. And the best part is that I enjoy every moment of it. As part of my nightly routine, I continued planning the next day's activities while thinking aloud in English. Speaking through my plans helped me practice vocabulary related to time, schedules, and everyday routines. I realized that organizing my thoughts in English every day makes the language feel more natural and easier to use. Over time, this small habit has improved my confidence, fluency, and ability to express ideas clearly. Before going to bed, I reflected on the entire day. I thought about the people I had met, the small conversations I had shared, and the moments I had spent simply observing the world around me. I began to notice something important. Daily life offers countless opportunities to practice English naturally. Whether it is speaking to a vendor at the market, describing a scene out loud, or sharing my thoughts with my husband, every moment becomes a chance to learn. None of these moments feel forced. They happen naturally, making learning both enjoyable and effortless. To end the night, I wrote a short paragraph summarizing my day. I focused on using the key vocabulary and expressions I had practiced earlier. Writing at the end of the day helps me connect all the skills I have been developing: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. When these skills work together, my English becomes stronger and more natural with each passing day. This morning, I woke up early again and decided to explore a new route for my morning walk. I wanted to discover streets I had never visited and notice things I usually walked past without paying attention. As I wandered along the unfamiliar path, I came across a small bakery that had just opened for the day. The warm smell of fresh bread and pastries filled the air, inviting me inside. I stepped in and met the owner, Mr. Ahmed, who greeted me with a friendly smile. He kindly offered me a warm croissant to taste. As I enjoyed it, I asked him about his daily routine. He explained that he begins baking at 4 in the morning so that everything is ready and fresh by the time customers arrive. Listening to him made me appreciate how much dedication and effort goes into running a small business. His passion and discipline were admirable, and our short conversation reminded me once again how valuable real-life English practice can be. After leaving the bakery, I continued my walk and soon noticed a young man, James, painting a mural on a large wall near the park. He was completely focused, skillfully using bright, bold colors to create patterns and shapes. Out of curiosity, I approached him and asked what inspired him to start the mural. He smiled and told me that he wanted to bring more life and creativity to the neighborhood. He hoped that people passing by would feel happier or more inspired when they saw the artwork. We talked briefly about art, color choices, and how creative work can influence people's moods. He explained how certain colors can make people feel calm, excited, or even motivated. Listening to him speak with such passion reminded me that creativity exists everywhere, sometimes on a canvas, sometimes in the way people speak, and sometimes in the way they choose to brighten their community. Observing James at work made me think about how art, just like language, has the power to change how we feel. Both require patience, practice, and a willingness to experiment with new ideas. And just like learning English, art becomes more meaningful when shared with others. Watching James paint the mural and describing his process in my mind in English helped me practice detailed description. Paying attention to small actions, colors, and patterns is a great way to improve advanced listening and speaking skills. I realized that describing real-life situations in English makes it easier to notice details and explain them clearly later, which is a skill I can use in conversations, storytelling, or even professional presentations. After returning home from my morning walk, I decided to prepare a light breakfast. I made avocado toast with a boiled egg and poured a glass of fresh orange juice. While eating, I listened to a short story podcast in English. The story was about a man who discovered a hidden park in a city, which soon became his favorite place to relax and enjoy nature. I tried to imagine myself in his position, thinking about what I would notice first, how I would feel walking there, and what small details would catch my attention. This kind of mental exercise is excellent for improving comprehension, as it encourages visualization and deeper engagement with the story. It also helps me practice thinking in English naturally, without translating from my native language. Later, I visited a nearby library to return a few books and borrow something new. The librarian, Mrs. Lewis, greeted me warmly and suggested a book about mindful living. I decided to borrow it because I wanted to learn more about staying focused and calm in daily life. While browsing the shelves, I noticed a group of students discussing a novel together. I overheard a few of their phrases and expressions, which reminded me how important it is to listen carefully and learn new vocabulary from real conversations. Observing others in this way is a subtle but effective method for improving understanding and expanding the words and phrases I use naturally. In the afternoon, my husband suggested we visit a small craft shop that had recently opened. The shop was filled with handmade candles, pottery, and decorative items. As we explored, I picked up a beautifully designed candle and noticed the intricate patterns carved on its surface. The shop owner, Anna, explained that each candle was carefully made by hand and shared a few tips about using candles and scents to create a relaxing atmosphere at home. I described everything I saw to my husband in English, practicing adjectives and descriptive language. Talking about tangible objects is an excellent way to build detailed vocabulary, and it feels practical because these are things we interact with every day. After leaving the craft shop, we returned home and decided to cook lunch together. We prepared a vegetable stir-fry using fresh ingredients from the market. While chopping vegetables and stirring the pan, we talked about flavors, textures, and cooking methods in English. Combining practical tasks like cooking with conversation helps me practice everyday vocabulary and encourages natural use of the language. Even simple activities become lessons when I describe them aloud and share them with someone. This day, filled with small experiences, watching a mural, enjoying breakfast, visiting the library, exploring a craft shop, and cooking together, reminded me how easy it is to integrate English practice into daily life. Every moment, when observed and described carefully, becomes a chance to improve listening, speaking, and thinking skills. Learning English doesn't only happen in classrooms. It happens in real life, step by step, moment by moment. That afternoon, my husband and I continued our cooking session and prepared a vegetable stir-fry with rice. While chopping and mixing the ingredients, we talked about different cooking methods and which vegetables go best with each sauce. I practiced using English words like sauté, chop, mix, and season. Cooking together gave us a chance to discuss healthy habits, meal planning, and tips to save time in the kitchen. By linking English conversation with everyday tasks, learning feels natural and becomes easier to remember. Later, I spent some quiet time on our balcony watering the plants. I noticed tiny flowers slowly opening and the fresh smell of the soil after watering. This simple activity made me reflect on personal growth. Just like plants, people need attention, patience, and consistency to grow. While watering, I described my actions aloud in English, using words like nurture, grow, healthy, and thrive. Speaking out loud about ordinary tasks helps me think in English naturally and practice sentences I can use in real life. In the evening, my husband and I went for a short bike ride around the neighborhood. The weather was perfect, with a gentle breeze and clear skies. While cycling, I described our surroundings in English. I noticed the deep blue of the sky, the slow sway of the trees, and the rhythm of the wind as it passed by. We also saw people jogging along the street and children playing near the park. Observing daily life and describing it aloud is one of the most effective ways to improve both listening and speaking skills because it encourages attention to detail and the use of natural vocabulary. After returning home, I took some time to read a few chapters from a book about communication skills. The book explained strategies for active listening, asking thoughtful questions, and responding carefully in conversations. I realized that listening in English is not just about understanding the words. It is also about noticing tone, intention, and context. To practice, I repeated a few sentences from the book aloud, focusing on pronunciation, rhythm, and natural emphasis. Reading and speaking in this way helps me internalize English patterns and improves my confidence in daily conversations. Before bedtime, I wrote a short reflection on the day in my notebook. I described my morning walk, visiting the bakery, observing the mural, watering the plants, and the short bike ride. Writing these moments in English allows me to connect speaking, listening, and writing skills. It also helps me remember vocabulary and expressions naturally. By reflecting on daily experiences, I am able to use English in real-life contexts, not just in lessons or exercises. Looking back on the day, I realized how many small, simple activities, Walking, observing, cooking, cycling, and talking can become opportunities to practice English. Every interaction, even a short conversation with a vendor, a description of nature, or sharing thoughts with my husband, helps me improve my vocabulary, sentence structure, and confidence. Learning English in daily life is not about perfection. It is about consistency, attention to detail, and enjoying the process. After writing about the library visit, the craft shop, and the bike ride, I realized that writing in English helps me connect daily experiences with the vocabulary and expressions I am learning. Recording these moments reinforces what I practice during the day and helps me remember words naturally. Combining listening, speaking, observing, and writing makes learning English more complete and enjoyable because it engages all skills at once. Later that night, I reviewed some new words I had learned throughout the day. Words like intricate, nurture, emphasize, and observe went into my vocabulary notebook. I practiced making sentences with each word to ensure I could use them naturally in conversations. This habit of active reflection helps me remember words and phrases better and makes my learning more practical for real-life situations. The next morning, I woke up feeling motivated to try a slightly different routine. Instead of drinking coffee right away, I started with stretching exercises. I rolled out my mat, took a few deep breaths, and focused on loosening my muscles. I noticed how much tension I carry in my shoulders and back without realizing it, especially after long work days. While stretching, I described each movement aloud in English, using words like extend, bend, balance, and relax. Speaking while performing small tasks makes learning interactive, and it helps me remember vocabulary naturally. After stretching, I prepared a smoothie for breakfast. I blended bananas, spinach, and a little honey. While pouring the smoothie into a glass, I observed the vibrant colors and textures of the ingredients. I described everything in English, from the creamy consistency to the fresh smell of the fruits and greens. I realized that paying attention to small details improves observation skills, which are very helpful for understanding English at higher levels. Describing actions aloud also improves fluency and confidence in speaking. Later in the morning, I decided to take a short walk around the neighborhood to enjoy the fresh morning air. As I walked, I met my neighbor, Mr. Clark, who was planting flowers in his front yard. We exchanged greetings, and I asked him about the types of plants he was growing. He explained how he carefully selects flowers based on their colors and growth patterns. Listening to him and asking questions gave me another opportunity to practice English in a real conversation. I also used the walk to describe my surroundings in English. I noted the color of the sky, the gentle sway of the trees, and the quiet sounds of birds singing nearby. Observing and describing the environment out loud helps me practice forming sentences, using adjectives, and expressing thoughts clearly. Even small conversations like the one with Mr. Clark contribute to improving my listening and speaking skills naturally. By the time I returned home, I felt energized and more confident in my English. I realized that simple routines, stretching, making breakfast, walking outside, and talking with neighbors can all become opportunities to practice language. The key is noticing small details, describing them aloud, and reflecting on the day in writing. Integrating English into daily life makes learning enjoyable and effective because it connects language with real experiences. Every moment, even ordinary ones, becomes a chance to improve vocabulary, fluency, and comprehension. While walking in the morning, I noticed my neighbor planting flowers in his garden. We started a friendly conversation about gardening techniques and the types of flowers that bloom in each season. I listened carefully, repeating some of his sentences in my mind to practice pronunciation and rhythm. Then, I shared a small story about the plants I grow on my balcony, explaining how I care for them and some challenges I face. Using real-life examples makes learning English much more interesting and practical than only studying from textbooks. After the walk, I went to a small local market to buy fresh vegetables. While selecting tomatoes, cucumbers, and carrots, I noticed the vendor arranging a colorful display. I complimented the arrangement in English, and we talked briefly about which vegetables are best for different dishes. These small conversations are very useful for practicing everyday English. They also teach me how to express opinions politely and notice the importance of tone, gestures, and friendly body language in communication. Back at home, I prepared lunch, making a vegetable curry with rice. While cooking, I explained each step aloud in English. First, chop the onions and garlic, then sauté until golden. Finally, add the spices and vegetables. Speaking while performing tasks helps me connect vocabulary with real actions, making it much easier to remember words. I also discussed cooking techniques with my husband, comparing flavors, textures, and presentation. Talking during shared tasks is a natural way to practice descriptive and instructional language, and it makes everyday activities more engaging. In the afternoon, I decided to visit a nearby library I had never explored before. The building was quiet, with rows of books and a calm atmosphere. I browsed the shelves and discovered a section dedicated to biographies. I picked up a book about an explorer who traveled to remote parts of the world. Sitting in a comfortable chair near the window, I read a few pages and imagined myself in the explorer's journey, thinking about the places he visited, the people he met, and the challenges he faced. Visualizing stories like this in English helps me practice comprehension, expand vocabulary, and improve my ability to describe experiences. While reading, I also tried to summarize each paragraph in my mind, using simple sentences in English. For example, I would think, he walked through the forest carefully. He climbed a high mountain. He learned about new cultures. This small exercise allows me to practice forming sentences naturally and helps me remember new words and expressions. I realized that imagining myself in the story makes learning more interactive and enjoyable, rather than just memorizing vocabulary from lists. Later, I returned home feeling inspired. The combination of walking, talking to neighbors, shopping, cooking, and reading showed me how easy it is to practice English every day. Each activity, no matter how small, can become an opportunity to improve listening, speaking, and thinking skills. I also noticed that describing everyday experiences, repeating sentences aloud, and reflecting on what I learned makes English learning more meaningful and memorable. Simple daily routines, when observed carefully and practiced in English, can become powerful tools for improvement. After leaving the library, I went to a small cafe to enjoy some tea. I chose a seat by the window so I could watch people passing by. I noticed a young man practicing piano on a small keyboard. His fingers moved quickly and confidently across the keys. I described his actions and expressions aloud in English using words like focused, graceful, and rhythmic. Observing and describing real-life situations like this is a very practical way to practice English. It also improves attention to detail. I even practiced asking questions in English in my mind, thinking about what I could say if I started a conversation with him. Later, I returned home and decided to organize my workspace. I cleaned my desk, arranged stationery, and sorted documents into different folders. While doing this, I described each step aloud in English: sort, arrange, tidy, file. I realized that even small activities like organizing can be surprisingly effective for learning practical vocabulary. While working, I also reflected on how having an organized space reduces stress and helps me focus better on tasks. Talking about personal experiences in English makes sentences more meaningful and easier to remember. In the evening, my husband and I went to a nearby park to enjoy the sunset. The sky was painted with beautiful shades of orange and pink. I described the scene aloud in English using words like vibrant horizon and reflection. We walked slowly, noticing birds returning to their nests and children playing near the swings. Observing nature and describing it in English helps improve both listening and speaking skills because it encourages detailed observation and use of varied vocabulary. While walking, we also talked about our plans for the weekend. We discussed activities we wanted to do and places we wanted to visit. Practicing how to express intentions and suggestions in English during real conversations makes speaking more natural. I noticed that sharing thoughts about everyday life helps me connect vocabulary, expressions, and grammar in a meaningful way. After returning home, I prepared a simple dinner for us. While cooking, I described each step aloud in English, just like I do with other daily tasks. I also thought about ways to use this time to practice new words I had recently learned. Combining daily routines with language practice allows me to learn English without feeling like it is a separate or forced activity. Every small action, from stirring the pot to chopping vegetables, becomes an opportunity to think, speak, and reinforce new vocabulary. That night, before going to bed, I reflected on my day. I wrote a short paragraph in English describing my walk, the cafe visit, organizing my desk, the park, and cooking dinner. Writing about daily life helps me connect listening, speaking, and writing skills, which strengthens my overall English. I noticed that simple routines, small observations, and everyday conversations provide endless opportunities to improve English naturally. Being consistent and paying attention to details is key to making learning both enjoyable and effective. That evening, I prepared a light dinner of grilled vegetables and lentils. While cooking, I played an English audio story about a person who overcame everyday challenges with patience and persistence. I repeated some sentences aloud to practice pronunciation and understanding. I noticed that listening to English while doing daily tasks helps me learn expressions and sentence patterns naturally. It feels integrated into my routine, which makes learning much easier and more effective. Before going to bed, I reflected on the day. I wrote a few sentences about my morning stretch, the walk around the neighborhood, visiting the library, and the evening park walk. Writing helps me organize my thoughts, practice new vocabulary, and reinforce the expressions I use during the day. I also noted down some new words I had learned, such as vibrant, meticulous, and perspective, and tried to make sentences with them. Combining listening, speaking, writing, and observing everyday life creates a complete learning experience and steadily improves my English skills. The next morning, I decided to wake up a little earlier than usual and try something new. I wanted to explore a small lake near our neighborhood. As I walked closer to the water, I noticed ducks swimming calmly. Some children were feeding them pieces of bread. I described the scene aloud in English: the smooth water, the gentle movements of the ducks, and the sunlight reflecting brightly on the surface. Observing and describing nature helps me practice vocabulary related to colors, movement, and emotions. While walking around the lake, I met an elderly couple, Mr. and Mrs. Benson, sitting on a bench and watching the water. We started a friendly conversation about the weather and the local wildlife. I asked questions about the types of birds they often see, and they shared stories about how the lake and its surroundings have changed over the years. Listening carefully and asking questions in English helps me understand real conversations better and improves my confidence in speaking. After leaving the couple, I walked slowly around the lake, noticing the small details of nature. The way the sunlight danced on the water, the gentle ripple of the ducks' movements, and the soft sounds of children laughing nearby. I described everything aloud in English, practicing words like calm, reflecting, gentle, and sparkling. I realized that paying attention to small details and describing them in words improves observation skills and strengthens both speaking and listening abilities. Later, I sat on a bench by the lake and reflected on the morning. I thought about how small experiences like watching ducks, meeting neighbors, or describing what I see can be used as opportunities to practice English naturally. Every simple activity, from observing nature to having short conversations, contributes to steady improvement. I also noted a few new words I had heard or thought about while describing the scene and tried using them in sentences in my notebook. Writing and speaking about real-life moments helps me remember vocabulary more easily than just memorizing from a book. By the time I returned home, I felt calm and motivated. I prepared breakfast while repeating some sentences from the story I had listened to the previous night. I also practiced describing my morning lake walk in detail. Combining small routines, reflection, and active observation creates a natural and enjoyable learning method. I realized that consistency is very important. Small steps every day, like observing, describing, listening, speaking, and writing, build strong English skills over time. Asking questions and listening carefully is a great way to practice English naturally. It encourages active engagement in conversations and helps me remember useful phrases. I noticed that while walking around the lake, I kept repeating some expressions silently in my mind to help them stick. Small actions like this make learning feel effortless and meaningful. After finishing the lake walk, I went to a small bakery nearby. I ordered a fresh loaf of bread and a cup of herbal tea. While waiting, I watched the baker kneading dough, shaping it, and folding it carefully. I described his movements aloud in English using words like knead, shape, and fold. Paying attention to small details and actions helps me practice describing processes and sequences in English. The warm aroma of freshly baked bread and the cozy environment made the morning feel calm and comfortable. Observing everyday life like this provides endless opportunities to improve language skills naturally. Back at home, I decided to organize my kitchen pantry. I sorted cans, jars, and packets into categories. While doing this, I described my actions aloud in English: arrange, categorize, label, clean. I thought about why some items should be kept together, like spices and herbs or cereals and grains. Speaking while performing tasks makes vocabulary more meaningful because the words are directly connected to real-life actions. I noticed that organizing small spaces reduces stress and makes cooking easier during the week. Later in the afternoon, my neighbor Lisa came to borrow a recipe book. We started talking about cooking and meal planning. I explained a simple recipe I often prepare, step by step, in English. She asked questions about the ingredients and cooking time, and I tried to answer clearly and naturally. Casual conversations like this, about topics we know well, are an excellent way to practice English in real situations. It also builds confidence in explaining things logically and using the right words in context. After Lisa left, I decided to do some indoor exercises. I set up a short circuit with stretches, squats, and light weights. While exercising, I described each movement aloud in English: stretch, bend, lift, balance. Talking about my actions while moving helps me practice vocabulary, improve pronunciation, and connect words to physical actions. I realized that combining small routines like this with language practice allows me to learn English naturally while also staying healthy. Later, I spent some quiet time reading a short story in English. The story was about a person exploring a new town and discovering interesting places. I visualized myself in the story, imagining the streets, shops, and people. This mental exercise improves comprehension, helps me think in English, and gives ideas for describing experiences in my own words. I also wrote a few sentences in my notebook, summarizing the story and using new vocabulary. Writing and speaking about real experiences in English reinforces what I learned during the day. By evening, I prepared a simple dinner. While cooking, I described each step in English and listened to an audio story about daily life lessons. Repeating sentences aloud and observing small actions, like stirring vegetables or setting the table, helps internalize expressions naturally. Before going to bed, I reflected on the day, noting moments like the lake walk, bakery visit, pantry organization, conversation with Lisa, and indoor exercises. Writing these reflections allows me to connect vocabulary, expressions, and real-life experiences. I noticed that using English in practical situations makes learning enjoyable and steady. Small, consistent steps every day, listening, speaking, observing, and writing help me steadily improve my English and feel more confident in using it. During my indoor exercise, I described each movement aloud: lift, stretch, bend, balance. I paid attention to how my body felt with each movement. I could feel myself getting stronger and more energetic after every set. Talking about physical activities in English helps me connect vocabulary with real actions and sensations. I also imagined how I could explain this exercise routine to someone else. Thinking about giving instructions in English improves my ability to use clear and natural sentences. In the evening, my husband and I decided to go for a short walk to a nearby coffee shop. The streets were quiet, and the air was cool and fresh. As we walked, I described everything I saw in English. The green trees, the soft breeze, the distant sound of cars, and the smell of freshly cut grass. Observing everyday life and speaking about it aloud is a great way to practice descriptive language. It helps me notice details and use new words naturally. At the coffee shop, I ordered a cappuccino and a small sandwich. While waiting, I noticed a few students studying together. They were practicing English and discussing a story. Watching and listening to people learning in real life reminds me how much we can gain from observing others. It also inspires me to try new ways of practicing English every day. After returning home, I spent some time reading a short story in English. The story was about a traveler visiting a quiet village. I tried to imagine every detail in my mind, the small streets, local shops, and the people he met. This mental visualization improves comprehension and helps me think in English naturally. I paused occasionally to repeat sentences aloud, practicing pronunciation, intonation, and natural rhythm. Imagining myself in the story makes learning more fun and helps me remember words better. Later, I prepared a simple dinner of grilled fish with vegetables. While cooking, I described every step in English. Season the fish, chop the vegetables, grill until golden. I also explained some steps to my husband, which helped me practice giving instructions naturally. Cooking together in English makes the practice interactive and enjoyable. It also allows me to connect vocabulary with actions I do every day. After dinner, we spent time talking about our day. We shared small stories like what we saw during our walk, what we learned at the coffee shop, and how we felt after exercising. Using English to talk about daily experiences helps me remember phrases and words better. I realized that speaking, listening, observing, and doing tasks in English throughout the day makes learning smooth and effective. Every small moment, from walking in the street to cooking dinner, becomes a chance to practice language naturally and confidently. Before going to bed, I reflected on the day. I wrote a short note about my exercises, the walk, the coffee shop, and dinner. Writing helps me organize my thoughts, practice sentences, and reinforce new vocabulary. I also noted new words I learned, like energetic, describe, visualize, and instruction, and tried to use them in sentences. Combining speaking, listening, observing, and writing every day is a simple but powerful way to improve English steadily and naturally. We also discussed plans for the next weekend, like visiting a nearby park and trying a new cafe. Talking about intentions and suggestions in English is useful for daily communication. It helps me practice forming longer sentences and expressing ideas clearly. Before going to bed, I reflected on my day and wrote a short paragraph in English. I described my visit to the lake, the bakery, organizing the pantry, and cooking dinner. Writing helps me remember new words and sentence structures. I also added a few new words to my notebook, like aroma, need, sequence, and visualize. Using these words in sentences, both aloud and in writing, makes them easier to remember. I realized that combining observation, conversation, and reflection creates a complete learning experience that improves comprehension and speaking skills. Today, I decided to try a different morning routine. Instead of having breakfast right away, I spent the first half hour writing in my journal. I wrote about my thoughts for the upcoming week, work plans, and small personal goals. I focused on using descriptive words and connecting ideas clearly. This practice helps me organize my thoughts in English and prepares me for natural conversations during the day. After journaling, I went outside for a short walk around the block. The air was fresh and crisp. I noticed small details that I often overlook, like a squirrel scampering across a tree branch and leaves gently fluttering onto the sidewalk. I described everything in English to myself, using words like flutter, scamper, and scatter. This type of observation strengthens my vocabulary and helps me practice forming full sentences while describing real-life situations. On my way back, I stopped by a small flower stall. The owner, Mrs. Ramirez, was arranging fresh roses and tulips. I asked her about the care each flower needed. She explained which flowers thrive in sunlight and which need shade. I listened carefully and repeated some sentences in my mind to practice pronunciation. I also shared a small story about the plants on my balcony, describing how I water and care for them. Talking about real experiences in English makes learning more practical and memorable. Mrs. Ramirez also explained which flowers do well indoors and which are better outside. I repeated her advice in my mind and practiced describing the flowers' colors, shapes, and scents in English. Using real-life objects like this makes learning practical and memorable. Back at home, I prepared a light breakfast of oatmeal with fruits and a cup of green tea. While cooking, I described the steps aloud. Boil the water, add oats, stir gently, and finally top with fresh fruits. I also thought about how I could explain this simple recipe to someone who had never cooked before, practicing instructional language naturally. My husband joined me, and we talked about our plans for the day while enjoying the meal. Conversing in English during routine tasks makes practice feel seamless and meaningful. Later, I visited a small local library I had never been to before. The building was quiet, filled with shelves of books on various topics. I browsed the nonfiction section and found a book about time management and productivity. I spent some time reading and imagining how I could apply the techniques to my own daily schedule. Visualizing scenarios in English while reading improves comprehension and helps me form new sentences in context. On my way home, I noticed a street artist painting a mural on a brick wall. I paused to watch and described his movements aloud: brush strokes, color mixing, and layering. I even imagined what he might be thinking as he created each detail. Observing people at work and narrating their actions in English is an excellent way to practice descriptive vocabulary and storytelling skills at the same time. In the afternoon, my husband and I decided to do some gardening. We planted a few herbs and small vegetables in our backyard. While digging holes, watering, and planting, I described every action in English: dig, plant, sprinkle, and cover. Gardening provides an opportunity to practice vocabulary connected to real-life actions, making it easier to remember and use naturally. Gardening helped me practice vocabulary related to nature and actions while performing physical tasks. I also talked about the expected growth of the plants and how long it might take for them to be ready for harvest. Explaining processes in English reinforces logical sequencing and sentence formation. Later, I spent some time doing light cleaning around the house. I organized books on the shelf, folded clothes, and wiped surfaces. While cleaning, I described my actions aloud in English: arrange, fold, wipe, and dust. This small habit of verbalizing everyday activities strengthens my ability to narrate tasks naturally. I also reflected on the benefits of keeping a clean and organized environment, which gave me ideas to expand my sentences with reasoning and details. In the evening, we went to a local cafe for a short visit. I ordered a latte and a small pastry while sitting by the window. Observing people outside, I described their actions aloud: someone jogging, a couple walking hand in hand, and children playing near the park. Describing real-world scenarios helps me practice English in dynamic contexts and improves my listening comprehension when others are speaking. I also thought about how I could start a conversation politely with strangers, practicing questions and responses in my mind. After returning home, I prepared dinner: baked chicken with vegetables. While cooking, I explained each step to my husband in English, practicing procedural language: marinate, season, bake, and serve. We talked about flavors, textures, and meal presentation. Cooking together allows for interactive language practice, and discussing preferences or ideas encourages the use of descriptive and comparative language naturally. Later, I spent time reading an English storybook about a traveler exploring a quiet village. I imagined each scene vividly in my mind, focusing on details like colors, sounds, and smells. Visualizing stories in this way improves comprehension and strengthens my ability to describe events clearly in English. Visualizing stories in English strengthens comprehension, helps retain vocabulary, and improves the ability to narrate similar experiences aloud. I paused occasionally to repeat sentences aloud, practicing intonation and rhythm for natural speech. Before going to bed, I reflected on the day and wrote a short summary in English about my morning walk, library visit, gardening, and cafe trip. Writing helps reinforce new vocabulary and expressions while connecting them with real-life experiences. I also noted a few new words such as marinate, procedural, sequence, and vivid, creating sentences with each one to practice using them actively. By combining observation, conversation, cooking, and reflection, I built a complete English practice routine that strengthens listening, speaking, and writing skills. This morning, I decided to try something different. Instead of my usual breakfast, I prepared a fruit salad with mangoes, strawberries, and kiwi. While chopping the fruits, I described the colors and textures aloud in English: bright, juicy, soft, and tangy. I noticed how paying attention to small details while describing them in English helps me practice both vocabulary and sentence structure naturally. My husband joined me, and we discussed which fruits are best for different seasons. Talking about familiar topics makes practicing English feel simple and meaningful. After breakfast, I went for a walk to a nearby park. The path was lined with tall trees, and their leaves were slowly turning orange and yellow. I described the scene aloud: crisp leaves underfoot, the gentle rustle of wind, and the occasional bird flying overhead. While walking, I met a man named Thomas who was jogging. We exchanged greetings, and I asked him how often he runs. He told me he runs every morning to stay healthy, and I try to summarize his routine in English in my mind. This small interaction helped me practice listening, understanding, and mentally forming sentences naturally. This interaction helped me practice asking questions, listening carefully, and forming responses naturally. On my way back, I stopped at a local bakery to pick up some fresh bread. The aroma was irresistible. I watched the baker carefully place loaves in the display and decided to describe his actions aloud: knead, shape, bake, and glaze. Observing and describing what people do in daily life improves my ability to narrate actions clearly in English. I also complimented the bread and tried to express appreciation naturally in English, which is useful for polite conversations in real life. When I returned home, I spent some time organizing my workspace. I sorted notebooks, pens, and documents into categories and described each step aloud: arrange, file, label, and organize. This small task gave me an opportunity to practice vocabulary related to daily chores. I also reflected on how keeping a tidy workspace makes it easier to focus on tasks, describing the benefits of organization in English using complete sentences. Later in the afternoon, I visited a nearby library I hadn't been to before. The quiet atmosphere allowed me to browse books without distraction. I picked up a book on mindfulness and read a few pages while sitting by a large window. I visualized the examples in the book, imagining how I would apply the techniques in my own life. Thinking in English while reading helps me connect vocabulary with concepts and practice comprehension in a natural way. After leaving the library, I went to a small cafe for tea. I chose a seat near the window to observe people passing by. I described their actions aloud in English: a child skipping along the sidewalk, a man carrying groceries, and a woman walking her dog. Describing scenes from everyday life enhances my descriptive skills and helps me use varied vocabulary when speaking English. While sipping my tea, I also imagined short conversations I could start with people I observed, practicing polite questions and responses in my mind. I imagined short conversations I could have with the people I observed, practicing questions and polite responses in my mind. Returning home, I decided to do some indoor exercises. I set up a small circuit with stretches, lunges, and light weights. While exercising, I described my movements aloud: bend, lift, extend, and balance. I noticed how my body felt with each exercise and described the sensations in English: warm, tense, relaxed, and strong. Linking physical sensations with descriptive vocabulary helps me practice English in ways that connect directly to real experiences. In the evening, my husband and I decided to try a new recipe for dinner. We cooked a vegetable stir-fry with noodles and a variety of sauces. While preparing the ingredients, I described each step aloud in English: chop, mix, stir, and season. We also compared flavors, textures, and color combinations, discussing which vegetables complemented each other best. Cooking together provides interactive practice and helps me use descriptive and comparative language naturally. After dinner, we took a short walk around the neighborhood. The streets were quiet, and the cool breeze was refreshing. I described the surroundings in English: the soft glow of streetlights, the gentle rustle of leaves, and the occasional sound of distant traffic. Observing and narrating everyday environments in English strengthens my ability to describe scenes fluently. We also talked about plans for the next day, practicing how to express intentions and suggestions using full sentences. Before going to bed, I reflected on the day and wrote a short paragraph in English. I described my morning fruit salad, the park visit, the library, the cafe, and our dinner preparation. Writing helps me reinforce vocabulary and sentence structures I practiced throughout the day. I also noted a few new words such as need, extend, flutter, and complement, and tried to use them in sentences to remember them better.